known that you want to see more of this series, so we are back to look at the next batch of Smash Bros. Ultimate stages to see which of these suckers I could survive as a human being if I were plucked from my chambers and placed into them. And if a stage is survivable, I also want to know, as a bonus, if I could cross it. That's just a morbid curiosity. We're looking at some great stages today. I'm pumped, so let's get right into the rules for this video. Now, if you want an explanation of why these rules are in place, I will refer you to the first video, because boy howdy, it's a whole thing. But I explain it all there, and if you don't want to watch that, you're just gonna have to trust that they're there for a good reason. So number one, although we are represented by, and the size of a Mii fighter, we cannot jump through platforms or double jump. To handle their OP jumping skills, I've set the rule that if a Mii can jump a single time and land on a platform on their feet, then we could make it. If they jump and have to hang on, no dice. For horizontal jumping distance, they must be able to clear it using a diagonal Y jump. I use the Nintendo Pro controller, that's why it's Y. 2, we can only navigate and interact with the level on the same 2D plane that the fighters can. No purposefully moving into the background or foreground. This is so that we face the same obstacles as the fighters do. 3, to count as survivable, we must be able to survive 5 hours on the stage, enduring whatever trials and tribulations it throws at us. 4, any outdoor stage over an altitude of 12,000 feet will not be counted as survivable. If you want to know why, once again, please refer to the first video. As much as people seem to enjoy my 6-minute tangent on altitudes, I don't think they would like it repeated very much. And 5, everything about the background will be taken into account when determining survivability, even the angle. Some people didn't like that I said that you would fall off the N64 Peach's Castle stage due to the weird angle that the stage is, and some people might not have understood what I was talking about at all, which I can understand because it's pretty difficult to explain with just words, so if you'll allow me, I've made this example to help you visualize what I'm talking about. Please clap. It's not my finest work, but it'll do. Okay, so this is how we would normally expect to see Peach's castle, and then this would be how we would expect to see the fighters, right? Everything in this situation is normal, gravity's working a-okay, this is alright. But this isn't how it is in the game. In the game, if you're the camera and you're facing the fighters, right? Peach's castle is more like this. And so if we then turn it to be the correct perspective again, you can see the issue there. Now some people totally understood that and still didn't like it, mainly because the fighters in the game don't experience gravity pulling them off the course. And I get it, but it's a tough line to toe regarding what you do and don't count in the background. Like the fighters also don't experience a lack of oxygen from being in space, but we would. And they'll suffocate from the toxic fumes in a closed environment, but we would. And the whole point is, could a human survive it? So in my opinion, I've got to take every aspect of the background into consideration. But to be fair, I posted a poll for both my channel members and my patrons to vote on, giving the arguments for both sides using the comments you all left, and allowed them to make the decision. Should the angle of the background be considered when determining survivability? When I added the votes from the channel members and patrons together, 66.67% voted that the angle should be considered, and 33.33% voted that the angle should not be considered. Full disclosure, that is not counting the votes for the third option on Patreon, which was, I don't mind either way, but I like to exercise my patron voting privileges, which I accidentally forgot to put on the YouTube poll. Sorry about that was my bad. But for the record, more people voted that they didn't mind either way than the votes for the angle not being considered, so it really didn't change anything. So since the majority of voters thought that the angle of the background should be considered when determining survivability, it shall remain considered. Now, while stages that are not survivable will still be red and stages that are survivable and crossable will still be green, we actually have a slight change of format for our chart this video. I wanted to try to make the chart a bit more readable for those who have a color vision deficiency, and I've been getting some feedback that while the red and green had a sharp enough contrast to be told apart, the yellow really blended in with the green. So where survivable but not crossable was yellow before, it will now be a blue. It's more indigo-ish, but we're just gonna call it blue. I know this still isn't perfect. There are so many different types of color vision deficiencies, but I tested out a million different versions on a website that simulated color blindness for images, and I think this is the best it's gonna get. Some people suggested I do shapes in addition to the colors, and I tried it, but you're just gonna have to trust me, it did not work. It started to look really busy and confusing, and it made it really hard to tell what stage was underneath it. So again, it's not perfect, I apologize, but hopefully this change, as well as me saying each verdict out loud, will help. I appreciate you understanding. Also, viewers who have been paying especially close attention might have noticed there's one other change to the chart. I have changed my mind about Dreamland. Yeah, I can do that. Last time I decided that while the angle is weird enough where you would fall off the stage, you would be caught by the tree in the background, and therefore you would survive the stage. At the time, my reasoning was that you weren't actively making the choice to stray from the two-dimensional path, but rather you were forced off the path by natural forces of the stage, and therefore it was fine. However, I've since remembered that the game is, can you survive on the 2D path that the fighters are on? And so because you would be forced away from the path, you cannot survive on the path. I'm not really sure why I had in my head that that only applied to crossing it. Alright, enough talk! Let's get into it! Picking back up where we left off, you might look at Brinstar depths and say, oh yeah, I can see where the danger might be. But friend, Crate is the least of our worries. This big lug isn't even going after you. He hits the stage itself, and even then you can safely navigate around the obstacles. No, the thing that's gonna take you out is the heat and fumes. See, while humans can safely navigate around areas with lava, we're basically in a magma chamber of sorts, and there's a reason we don't have any live footage from magma chambers. Technology, let alone humans, can't survive anywhere close to those temperatures. The temperature of magma is anywhere between 700 and 1300 degrees Celsius, converted to Fahrenheit here. So if you think this would be like being in a giant oven, you're wrong. Most home ovens go up to 200 degrees Celsius. And then you've got the hazardous gases that magma produces as well. The dinosaur isn't looking so bad. So this would not be survivable in the slightest, and it's for the same reason that we're also gonna X out Norfair. Look how close this magma gets to you. Yeah, I know, Link. Brinstar depths and Norfair are both unsurvivable. Next up, we've got Big Blue, and if you thought there was any chance, it's not even a matter of getting off the initial Falcon Flyer. You'd be gone instantly. As you'll remember from the first video, when you're on top of a moving vehicle, you're going to experience air drag. The same speed that the vehicle is moving is going to be the speed of the air that's hitting you. The ships in Smash Ultimate's Big Blue stage are modeled after the ones in F-Zero GX, and in that game you can get above 2,000 kilometers per hour, which is about 1,243 miles per hour. Looking at our wind chart, and just a reminder, about 70 mile per hour winds would knock the average adult over, 1,243 mile per hour winds would probably not be great. So yeah, absolutely no way. And the other stage from the F-Zero series, Port Town Aero Drive, is no better. This footage isn't even sped up. That's so crazy fast. And we finally got an example of a stage that's over 12,000 feet from sea level. Yes, the altitude rant wasn't for nothing. So Big Blue and Port Town Aero Drive are both unsurvivable. Starting out in Fourside, feeling a little cramped. The jump to the right would also be difficult to make because of the beams, but luckily the crane moves out of the way. However, that jump is a bit too high, so we're actually gonna use the crane to make that jump. Oh yeah, there's a UFO. It doesn't do anything, don't worry about it. We can hop all the way to our right without too many problems. And, oh, bye UFO. And getting back isn't too much of an issue either, although it would admittedly be pretty scary from this high up. Regardless, Fourside is survivable. Delfino Plaza is a wild journey where a flying platform takes you around in different parts of the plaza where you can battle, or in our case, not battle, to your heart's content. Now, if you've been paying attention, you might immediately mark this relatively quick-moving platform as dangerous, and you'd be right. However, there is a difference between this and the other fast-moving vehicles and platforms we've been on that I think makes all the difference. The grating. This grating would be perfect for wrapping your fingers around and holding on. It's not like this platform is moving hundreds of miles per hour, and even the times where the angle gets pretty wild, it's for a short enough amount of time where I think you could hold on for it. And it's directly underneath the fighters, so it's on the same plane. As for each stop you get to, this is an island tourist destination. There's nothing particularly dangerous at any of the spots. And you can even cross all of those too. Delfino Plaza is survivable. The Mushroomy Kingdom is a constantly side-scrolling level based on the Super Mario Bros. 1-1 level, and as you may guess, going off the screen would be considered as unsurvivable in real life as it is in the game. Luckily, most of the obstacles in this stage aren't too bad. You can make it over all the pipes and clear the gaps with no problem, but the real issue lies mere steps away from the finish line. That jump is ridiculously high. Fans of my Which Mario Kart 8 courses could I as a human run have heard this spiel before, but grant me a moment to explain it again for this series. Reddit user Just Chatty used the measurements in the training mode of Smash Bros. To determine that the Mii fighters are 5'3". Not the canon height of a Mii, but what we've got to work with. Then when researching how high humans can jump without sustaining serious injuries, I came across an EMT that said a fall 3 times a person's height is considered a critical fall in the field, and a parkour athlete who said that they could make a max 16-foot jump without injury. Now this actually works out pretty neatly in our case here, because 5'3" multiplied by 3 is 15'9", which is quite close to the 16 feet referenced by the athlete. Now, that being said, this series is looking at something different from the Mario Kart Run series. In the Mario Kart Run series, I was looking at whether or not you could maintain a somewhat consistent jog throughout the course. In this series, I'm looking at whether or not you could survive. All that being said, if we look at how tall this ledge is, it's about 4 1/3 Mii's, which is 22 feet 9 inches. This might be dark, but even if I just broke both my legs, it's a moving level. And it repeats. I'd have to make that jump over and over. Mushroomy Kingdom is not survivable. And Figure 8 Circle also has another questionable jump, because the best way to survive this course would be to drop down to the lower level and get off the road. The fall is a little less than the height of 3 Mies, but this is where that difference between being injured and surviving comes into play. Even if I suffered an injury from falling that distance, it would be easy enough to still scooch over a couple feet and wait out the 5 hours. The racers on the stage appear in really spaced out intervals, so I don't have concerns about having enough time to clear the track. This also means you could safely cross the track as well, as long as you waited for the racers to go by. Figure 8 Circuit is survivable. For Wario Ware Inc., where are we in this scenario? What does it mean for us to be in a video game, or for the surrounding atmosphere to be a drawing? I'm gonna overlook the trippiness of the scenario and just say that I'm assuming we're in a livable, breathable atmosphere here. Well, livable is technically questionable, because this stage has immense amounts of danger. One question that came up while I was writing this was how much hypothetical experience would I have had with these stages before being placed in them? Would it be my very first time experiencing all these things, or would I have the knowledge of someone who's played them a million times? And I lean towards the former, but more so because Anna, genuinely don't have a ton of experience with a lot of these levels, especially the later into the levels you get. So when I'm playing through these to research the video and get the footage, I am actually taken by surprise at a lot of the things that happen and try to navigate around them on the spot, which is why I consider pluses like the Pokemon Stadium stage transforming slowly enough for me to naturally avoid some of the potential hazards. I bring it up for this stage because the whole gimmick of the stage is that you're put into different mini-games and have to somewhat guess what the correct action is based on the context clues, which is exactly what Wario Ware is as well. But even if you know the minigames really well, there's still some amount of randomness and speed to it that would give a human some difficulty. Like, even after playing for a good while, I still got by that freaking car. And you've got to endure these minigames for 5 hours, so I would say repeatedly getting stomped by a giant foot, shot with a barrage of arrows, hit by a car, pounded into the ground via earthquake, and bathed in acidic rain would make this pretty deadly. Also, the rewards for succeeding at these minigames are things like turning metal or turning giant, and those are pretty drastic bodily changes in and of themselves. So I feel good saying that Wario Ware Incorporated is unsurvivable. The very first threat we face on the bridge of Eldin is King Bulbin and Lord Bulbo riding through, and it's times like that where I have to say King Bulbin and Lord Bulbo with a straight face where I don't know how any non-gamer could ever take me seriously. But I was absolutely shocked to find out that a single jump actually clears this gentleman. Now, of course, it wouldn't be that simple in real life, since you have to remember that we're not actually getting our feet as high as the Mii when we're jumping, so we would likely be gored all the same. But I'm actually much more interested in the powder keg he leaves behind him that explodes a small portion of the bridge. Much like I did for the Bonsai Bill explosion in the first video, I wanted to know exactly how much damage this could be expected to do in real life. Okay, so we're not going to immediately jump into the explosive threat distance guide from the last video, because the explosives capacity column contains TNT equivalency measurements, and powder kegs are not as powerful explosives as TNT. In fact, powder kegs aren't, or weren't, ever actually used as a weapon. Rather, powder kegs were just barrels used to store black powder, or gunpowder. And gunpowder doesn't detonate like TNT does. It's considered a low explosive and goes through a process called deflagration, which is where it burns up super fast, but still at a subsonic speed, creating a combustion, as opposed to TNT, which is a high explosive detonating at a supersonic speed to create a much more destructive blast. What makes the gunpowder more dangerous in a powder keg is the pressure that gets added from those gases released from deflagration being trapped. That pressure is what turns deflagration into something more like detonation, albeit it's still not as strong as TNT. However, we can get pretty close to finding the TNT equivalent for a powder keg, though it's near impossible to get exact since there are so many factors that we couldn't possibly know in this hypothetical scenario. Like the width of the powder keg casing is just one example. To get the TNT equivalent, we have to look at the energy released by the substance. Gunpowder has an energy content of 3 megajoules per kilogram, and the average powder keg held 100 pounds, or 45.5 kilograms of gunpowder back in the day. We multiply that by 3, and we find that a standard powder keg has an energy content of 136.2 megajoules. TNT has an energy content of 4.184 megajoules per kilogram. So if we divide the powder keg's 136.2 by 4.184, we find that a standard case of gunpowder has a TNT equivalent of 32.55 kilograms of TNT. If we put that back into pounds, that means that a standard powder keg with 100 pounds of gunpowder has a TNT equivalent of 71.76 pounds of TNT. Roughly. So now we can go back to the chart and see that it would pack a bit more of a punch than the briefcase row, which has a mandatory evacuation distance of 150 feet. So how far away from this powder keg can we get on the stage? If we stack the Mii fires to measure to the end of the screen, you can fit about 12 of them on there, which only adds up to 63 feet. So we are far too close to this explosion, with the real danger being the wood and metal shrapnel that the exploding barrel would produce. And remember, we're here for 5 hours, where this powder keg would be exploding again and again and again. So pretty fatal. Oh, and we'd get gored. So Bridge of Eldin would be unsurvivable. Frigate Orpheon is from the Metroid series, but while it might take place in space, since it's inside a spaceship, I'm gonna say we can breathe alright. It's not like Lylat Cruise where we're in space outside a spaceship. Oh yeah, we can take that one off. Lylat Cruise is unsurvivable. But this one frustrated me to no end, because I spent 5 minutes sitting, just waiting around the stage to see what its deal was, only to experience a couple power outages that lasted a few seconds and the platform slowly moving around. I was ready to chalk this one up to survivable and crossable and call it a day. And then, when I went to check the name of something on the Smash Bros. Wiki, I saw that the gravity flipped in the level. And this makes my job so frustrating, because I will be sitting in each stage for what feels like forever, and sometimes I just won't get a randomized event. Yeah. Anyways, I went back and experienced the gravity flip, and yeah, that kind of fall would absolutely kill ya. Frigate Orpheon is unsurvivable. Next up, we're looking at Yoshi's Island Brawl Edition. Petition to make Yoshi's stages a bit more interesting, because the other two were equally uneventful last time. Even this angry guy just minds his own business. Just to spice things up, I roughed up Yoshi a little because I was promised food from the Shy Guys while waiting for the level to load and thought that they didn't have any because we were both at full health. But even then, the Shy Guy gods smiled not upon the broken creature who lay at my feet. And it remained very boring. But yes, you can cross Brawl's Yoshi's Island and you can survive it. Halberd is impressive because it is potentially the most brutal level so far. Right from the jump, standing this close to a ship during takeoff would likely destroy you due to the sound alone. Rockets can reach up to 200 decibels when taking off, and it's at this level that the pressure in the air gets to the point where sound waves turn to shock waves. Sudden pressure changes like this will burst your eardrums, sure, but can also rupture your lungs and cause pulmonary embolisms and pulmonary contusions. The heat would also probably leave you barbecued. Then, of course, the immediate altitude change would do a number on ya, as you know from the first video. After that, it's flying at angles where you definitely fall off, getting cooked by the engines, taking a cannonball to the face, getting drilled into by a giant metal claw, and getting absolutely obliterated by a laser. I think it's safe to say that Halberd is unsurvivable. I was pretty surprised that Ultimate decided it needed both a Pokemon Stadium and a Pokemon Stadium 2 that served the same basic function, but whatever. Like the first one, the stage transitions smoothly between different settings, and none of the stage themes seemed particularly harrowing. Definitely not in the sense of being life-threatening. I was interested in the flying type arena, because while I could tell that the wind was coming up from the ground, I was also wondering if those were fans in the background that could potentially push us off the stage. But looking closer, they're actually wind turbines, which use wind to create electricity instead of the other way around. So they really wouldn't do anything. And you can just as easily cross this stage as the first one, so Pokemon Stadium 2 is survivable. Castle Siege made the extremely bizarre choice of having both pretty realistic settings and wild, abstract stage transformations. I feel like they can't have their cake and eat it too, but despite how beautiful each setting may be, you are trained up enough to know why the final transformation of this cavern full of magma wouldn't work. Castle Siege is unsurvivable. Fully knowing that Distant Planet and a couple others were on the agenda, I had another poll to see if we should still consider ourselves the same size as the fighters for stages where it seems like the fighters are shrunk down. And this poll was open to everyone, so if you missed it and want to be sure to catch future polls, make sure to turn on notifications for my channel so you know when I post them. And the overwhelming majority voted that we should consider ourselves the same size as the fighters even on these levels. Whether you want to think of it as us shrunken down or everything else sized up, I don't think it matters too much, but that's the verdict. So that aside, the first thing to clear up is that even though this is from Pikmin, which involves our main character traveling to distant planets, there is oxygen on this planet. The little purple and white dudes in the background are cloaking burrow nits, an enemy exclusively found in Pikmin 2, where Captain Olimar was exploring PNF 404, which had a high concentration of oxygen that was toxic to him, but not to the Pikmin and everything else living on that planet. The next thing I was worried about was this giant bullboard, but this big guy doesn't even attack, just waits patiently for food to hop into his mouth. Must resist intrusive thoughts. The last hazard would be the rain, and you definitely wouldn't want to be on the left side of the stage during the downpour, but if you stay under a leaf and wait it out, it's not too big of a deal. When it's sunny, you can run across the whole shebang, so Distant Planet is survivable. Smashville has a fun little mechanic where the time of day in the stage is determined by your Switch's clock, so you can tell approximately what time I filmed this footage. Or I changed the clock. Always keep them on their feet. Anyways, no real threats here, but I do want to talk about the background, because some people might take issue with me saying you couldn't stay on the N64 Peach's castle due to the angle of the background, but that you would be fine on this one. But there's a difference. First of all, in Peach's castle, the ground goes all the way to the top of the screen. It's not like you can see the horizon on the distance, so already that's a big difference. But even more so, Smashville is styled after Animal Crossing Wild World and City Folk, but more so Wild World. And Wild World was the first Animal Crossing game to use a globe system when your character was walking around, rather than transferring from screen to screen. So this globe-esque imagery is to pay homage to that. But also, when your character faces forward in that game, you as the player don't see the top of the player's head like you would as if you were looking at the ground. You see their front. Compare this to Mario 64, where the perspective of the world is very true to how it is in the real world. If the camera is above Mario, you see the top of his head, and you can also see the top of the castle from above it. So this makes sense in the world of the game. This does not. And for those reasons, the Smashville background will be accepted as suitable. Also, the angle of Smashville really isn't that crazy, even with the tilt. You might be thrown off balance a little, but it's not really fall-off worthy. And the stage is also crossable. You might even say, animal crossable. Smashville is survivable. Newport City might be floating in the sky in Smash Ultimate, but it looks like it's only a little ways above the tallest skyscraper in the background, so I don't think we're in danger of being above 12,000 feet here. And when I first saw it, I thought there was no way this would be crossable with our established rules, but I'll tell you what, this swinging ship really came in clutch. Don't get me wrong, this would be terrifying, but I only use diagonal jumps for all of these, so we could, in fact, make it from one side to the other. And we can even go the other way too. Again, scary, but doable. The biggest threat on this stage would be the ultimate chimera, which you do not want to get caught in the jaws of, but it only shows up in certain areas of the map and it moves really slowly, so I have faith that you could avoid it. Newport City is survivable. Okay, so the first thing— whoa! Sorry, jumped out of instinct there, but we wouldn't be able to jump in the air like that, so let me give that another try. Okay, so even if the floor drops out on you when you're not expecting it, you still land on the stage, which is a relief. Now, the ground is made of ice and is slippery, so you'll definitely want to be careful. After that, I was thinking, okay, this looks pretty alright, and was about to look into the coldest temperature a human could survive for 5 hours, when this happened. Absolutely not. You would fly off. And this polar bear proves my exact point when later he flies off. Polar bears start at 300 to 500 pounds and go up to almost 1,800 pounds. Then you plummet into the water where the iceberg starts sinking, and just when I was about to look into how long you could survive in Arctic waters, this madness. What is happening? No, you would have lost us back here. Summit is unsurvivable. Skyworld is from the Kid Icarus series and is home to Palutena and Pit. You can even see Palutena's temple in the background. But there are humans in the Kid Icarus series who live in the overworld, so I think it's safe to say that altitude rules apply here, and this would be too high up to survive on for that long. Skyworld is unsurvivable. Shadow Moses Island is deceptively harmless. Your heart might start pounding as you get caught in the spotlight, or as the wall breaks down and a Metal Gear bursts through, but these guys don't do anything. First of all, you'd be protected from the rubble of the wall by the overhead walkway. But then despite how menacing they look, the Metal Gears don't have any interest in harming you, regardless of where on the course you are. I even sent Samus up to double check the top floor was safe too. So obviously, I was about to check this off as a survivable, crossable level. But then after the fact, I learned that the side towers were breakable, which I didn't know because why on earth would I try to break them in my scenario? But if we extended the playing field for On It due to a good amount of fighting space on either side, I feel like it's only fair that we extend the length of the course to the edges for this one. Unfortunately, you would have no choice but to break the towers with your bare hands, and even if you managed to do that, all the rubble would topple on top of you and crush you. So I think I've got to say that Shadow Moses Island is survivable, but not crossable. Luigi's mansion is somewhat surprisingly uneventful. While you can break down the mansion by attacking the pillars, unlike Shadow Moses Island, there's literally no reason to do it since you can cross it normally. Without that, this level is both dull and survivable. Life on a pirate ship in this game is just as hazardous as the life on a pirate ship is portrayed in the media, and perhaps more so than life on a pirate ship in real life. Hey, real quick, if you could live on any pirate ship, would it be the one from Wind Waker, Peter Pan, Muppets Treasure Island, Pirates of Penzance, deep cut, or Pirates of the Caribbean? Or another one? Sound off in the comments. But back to the dangers. First off, you have bombs being fired at you. Bombs, not cannonballs. Then you have this insane tornado moment that resulted in me having Rainbow Cruise flashbacks. Obviously that drop back down wouldn't work out too well for you. Then in one last sneaky move, the game tells you, uh-oh, look out, the ship's about to crash onto land. So you figured you'd better get off, right? Wrong! The ship rights itself, you can no longer get on the boat, and you get crushed under it instead. The whole thing is one big death trap. pirate ship is unsurvivable. Despite the starry skies, Spear Pillar is not in space, but at the peak of Mount Coronet in the Sinnoh region, as seen in Pokemon Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum. But being planted on terra firma will not save you, as you have 3 legendaries trying to kill you. And they can do so in numerous ways. Number 1, if you're on a part of the stage that randomly gets crumbled to bits and you fall down there, you're done. You can't get back up, and you can only wait until you're eventually lasered. Speaking of lasers, you can also get lasered vertically in a variety of places on the stage. Or you can get a crescent to the face multiple ways. Or Dialga will just come out and kill you. I don't know what you did to these legendaries, but you're not surviving on this stage with these angry Pokemans for 5 hours. Spear Pillar is unsurvivable. 75 meters. The OG Mustachio Man could make it through, but could we? Well, yes, actually. And I was surprised to find that the ladders are actually climbable. Being careful of the spontaneous combustions and timing it out with the giant springs, we can make our way across. And, force of habit, sorry. I'm just trying to make it across, not up. So you can cross it, though if you want to talk survival, I recommend staying on the left where there's a distinct lack of fire and springs. Also, once again, I don't know where we are technically, but I'm giving the same grace as Wario Ware that the black void we're in contains oxygen. So 75 meters is survivable. 26 more stages down and so many to go. How y'all feeling? As usual, I would love to know which of these stages you would most and least want to spend 5 hours on. And also, I don't know why, but I genuinely would like to know your answer to the pirate ship question. Please tell me. And if I may make one more humble request, we hit 40k subs, thank you so much, and we are on the road to 50k now. So if you want to say that you were in the first 50,000 subscribers on the Goombanna channel, be sure to check and make sure that you actually are. Now I've got to go change the clock on my Switch, but I'll see you on the next video. Bye!
Goombanna is the one to watch, she didn't come to play. Gaming vids that'll make you laugh and think and put them on replay. Intelligent, kind of funny, her community's #1. Stick around and kick your feet up. Goombanna has just begun.